The group stage is finally over. VCT Americas Stage 2 ends with a bang and a week of upsets. But before we get into the games, let's talk about this group draw. This might be the best possible group draw we could have gotten. And it's all because of one possible matchup. And that is M80 and Sentinels. If anyone remembers, M80 have Kaplan, the old coach of Sentinels, and he should be Envy because Envy look a little shaky, and then play his old team in the grudge match of the century, and that would be cinema. I can't wait. As for the others, G2 failed to make playoffs, and Cloud9 have an easy run to a qualification game, as they should be favored in both their first matches against Fluxo and EG. Without further ado though, let's get into this week's games. It started with EG's upset victory against Furia, as Furia really just can't seem to put it together. The biggest thing about their comp that I don't understand is that on Summit, Shy is playing Chamber, and when surely you want Koala Noob with the op. Koala is one of the best oppers in the world in Stage 1, and it just makes no sense. As for Map 2, despite Koala Noob and Basic's best attempts, they just got bodied on the breeze. Honestly, whoever's in charge of all these roster moves, and I don't think it's fair to blame the players, has really just dropped the ball. This was a great team at the beginning of the year, and now their best player is Basic, who's a flex player, and isn't really in the role to take over a game. As for EG, although they were good in this game, their later match against NRG really showed that they haven't improved all that much throughout the stage, despite the good signs, as they got bodied 13-1 on Lotus and 13-7 on Breeze. Speaking of NRG, they also played Envy, and they 2-0'd them as well, 13-6 to 13-9. Honestly though, this game was a frustrating watch, especially on the Haven, as Envy are doing some really quite good things. Specifically, it starts when Demon 1 walks out of his chamber TP into players through a smoke and just dies with his op. And they lose the round from there, and from then on, they've lost their damn minds. Whilst I don't think there's much hope for Envy to get to playoffs, I do think they are making the right strides and at least going in the right direction. Speaking of a team moving in the right direction, Cloud9 2-0 100 Thieves. And honestly, this was a banger. It started off with Split, with an overtime game that went to 15-13, and then went to Breeze, where they won 13-11 against 100 Thieves. Honestly, this game was a little odd, as Asuna played out of his mind still, but the rest of 100 Thieves seemed a step out of sync, a step behind what they usually play at. And that's not to take anything away from C9, as although they only won the Breeze because Oxy went insane and dropped 32 kills, the rest of C9 has stepped up and is playing a lot better overall. Honestly, going into play-ins, C9 looked dangerous for the first time this year, as they are on the same page and playing off each other beautifully. Now we get to the biggest upset this week. G2 got 2-0'd by Loud. After locking in last week to beat Sentinels, causing heartbreak amongst E-couples everywhere, G2 get bodied by a Loud team that has done nothing this stage. And I do mean bodied, as while Sunset was a close OT game, Lotus was lost 13-1. Leaf especially underperforming, going 2-14. But really what shocks me is that they just didn't look like they had any idea about how to stop what Loud were doing. And it wasn't this match where they lost the playoff slot to Loud. But honestly, if G2 look this lost, going through play-ins and having to prove to themselves that they do still have it might actually be good for them. Especially since their champ spot is all but guaranteed, given that the top 3 teams are so far ahead on champs points, and they are among the likes of Leviathan and NRG, who are likely to get top 2 anyway, because this is the last chance they have before champs to reinvent themselves and find a playstyle that works for them, rather than just relying on these comfort roles, which have been underwhelming throughout this entire year compared to where we expect G2 to be. As the reigning America's champs for the last 2 years, they need to get their act together. As for Loud, they're also a hard team to place, as they also got bodied later on by 100 Thieves in a 2-0 victory that had little suspense Though they did make the beginnings of a comeback on Haven, it was all for naught, and they did lose that 13-10 against 100 Thieves. Though there is something to be said that they are putting their IGL on Phoenix, and that being a bad role for an IGL to be in. And you see this in NRG with Ethan as well, where he struggles on the Phoenix on Haven because it's not a good role for an IGL to play. That said, they did lose despite Asuna having his first bad map of the stage. But with Loud in playoffs guaranteed, you cannot write this team off, and you have to say that they do have a chance to make it to champions, even as an underdog. Next up is Crew versus Sentinels, and oh my god, Crew finally locked in and fixed their team. Alright, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Although this team is known for making runs, no one's predicting it quite just yet. But they have improved, and let's talk about it. What they've changed purely comes down to just heat. They've moved away from running the Jet Neon double dive and moved towards playing Chamber instead, who is still just as meta as a pick, but works much better as a comfort role for their team, which allows Les to play mostly Viper, his comfort role as a lurky player. That said, on Summit, they still have some things to work out, with less on Omen, a role he's not quite as good on, simply because he likes to play that lurky style, which allows him to take his own timings and fights, whereas on Omen, it's better if you play with the pack a little bit more, because you have the paranoia, which is one of the, if not the strongest abilities in the game. While I don't think it is likely, I think that what they've shown us is in the right direction of if they were going to make playoffs. Personally, I do think it's a little late, but crazier things have happened with this team. As for Sentinels, I think they just had a couple individual underperformances, and that was that. This is a team that is still learning to cooperate and play together. Sentinels are a team right now that's relying a bit too much on individual plays, and it's interesting to see that if Jerwin gets under 16 first blood, they're not even competitive in the series. Like against G2, even though he did lose a lot of first duels as well, he did get 16 first blood, and he was up there on the scoreboard on top of that, getting extra kills. And it is interesting to see that the drop-off from the whole team when that doesn't happen. Overall, while I do expect Sentinels to make playoffs, I also wouldn't be that surprised if they didn't, because there's a lot of upset potential, especially with M80 in their side of the bracket and the pressure that will be on that game. It's one of those things where playing at their best, they probably should make playoffs, but we've already seen that this team is volatile and that they might not play at their best at all. The last match we're going to talk about this week was the best match this week, Leviathan versus MIBR. Honestly, though, whilst it's not surprising that Lev beat MIBR, what is surprising is that I think MIBR trolled the map veto, because they gave Lev Split and Sunset, both of them being two of their best maps, as Lev are undefeated since the beginning of London on Split, and on Sunset they have recently shown similar form against NRG, another top team in the region. Honestly, even if you put aside the game plan and the map veto, I still think MIBR came into this game the weaker team. And I don't even mean in individuals, because Aspas put up 8 and 2 in first blood. MIBR as a whole got more first bloods than Lev did on Split, and yet they were still just destroyed in these team fights. There were times where it felt like their aim just let them down, but honestly, I don't even necessarily think it was just that. It was the fact to be caught off guard by what Lev were doing and the positions Lev took, rather than them being necessarily outplayed or out-aimed, though obviously there were moments. Lev just are quite insane after all.